Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm Nick, and today I'm going to be continuing my reviews for the People series with the movie Lords of Chaos. Now, this was requested by HorrorHead Heather, who is a huge supporter of my channel from the very first day I started uploading videos. And not just my channel, she's a huge supporter of all the other horror YouTube channels that I associate with. So she's a big help to all of our channels, so a big shout out to her. And let's dive in to the movie she chose. So Lords of Chaos was released at festivals in 2018. It stars Rory Culkin, Emery Cohen, Jack Kilmer, and was directed by Jonas Ockerlin. And for the sake of this review, guys, I am going to be going by the uncensored Director's Cup Blu-ray. It's the only version I have ever seen, so that's what I'm going by. So basically, this movie follows a guy named Jonas, who is the founder of Norwegian black metal band Mayhem. We see his life through the Black Circle, all the way up through the mid-90s, where he was murdered by a former band member, Varg, who also founded the band Burzum. So guys, it's no secret that I'm a huge metalhead myself, but black metal is just not exactly my cup of tea. It's not a subgenre I really listen to that often. It doesn't really capture me. Just not my style personally. So I never really knew much about the band Mayhem aside from their name, and I heard through the grapevine over the years about a murder happening and whatnot, but I didn't really know much about them. So this movie was really like a fresh look at the band. So I can't really comment too much on what was real and what wasn't in this film. I actually did research after the fact and learned a few things here and there, but I don't exactly know the entire story myself. I'm still very new to it. I just know that the fans online don't really seem to gravitate towards this film. They don't really like it at all the big Mayhem fans and black metal fans alike. Even the band members themselves don't really seem too fond on this, which is understandable. I mean, this is essentially like a Hollywood take on their biopic, which doesn't really mix well with black metal, you know, the mainstream. But this is somewhat based on a true story. It's based on truth and lies. Like, the way I see it, the major events in the film, like the 2 or 3 major events that take place throughout, did happen. Maybe they were tweaked a bit to make the story a little more entertaining or just to fit the narrative. But, like, yeah, like the suicide at the house actually happened. The murder at the end actually happened. But maybe the journey getting there just was a bit different, and maybe the portrayal of certain characters weren't done very good in the film. But all that put aside, I'm going to be just reviewing how this movie was, not on the actual events and how close they were to that, because I'm no expert in that. I mean, right off the bat, the title, Lords of Chaos, actually has nothing to do with mayhem in real life. Like, that was kind of just slapped on here for a movie title. Lords of Chaos is actually a book that deals with the Norwegian scene at the time. It does deal with black metal and mayhem and that, but that's just like a section of this book. It deals with so much more of what was going on in Norway at the time. That's what I'm reading when I look up online. So really, they just took the title of that book and slapped it on here for Euronymous' biopic, essentially. So yeah, the movie might have way too much fiction in there for some people, but like I said, to me, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to dive right into the positives now on the things that I really enjoyed about this film. And I guess the first positive thing I can give about this film is whether it was fictional or fake or whatnot, you have to admit it gave the band more publicity. Like, the fans may not like it or not, but after this movie, more people went out and checked out the Mayhem's discography. They went and did some research and found out the truth and the facts, you know? I know I did. After watching this film, I wanted to know more. It got me so interested in the band itself and in the band members that I had to go out and start looking up information about them right after to see what was real, what wasn't. And I started checking out a few of their songs as well. So right there, where I would have never checked out this band, this movie put me in the right direction. Whether you like the movie or not, you have to admit that it is good marketing for the band itself. And as for the movie itself, I was genuinely entertained from start to finish. There's no filler in here. I didn't feel like the runtime dragged at all. I was completely engaged, and there is quite phenomenal pacing for this type of drama story. And the way the story is told, it basically starts in the late 80s and goes all the way through to the mid 90s. But I feel like the time in this film flows so naturally, it don't feel jarring when we're skipping ahead from year to year. It feels like a natural progression, and it's just a really nice flow to the whole thing for jumping time periods. And one of the most surprising things about this film is its tone. It's very dark and sinister, which really accompanies the black metal genre very well. I mean, it's violent, it's disturbing, it don't shy away from things I thought it would. Like, I wasn't expecting to see the little bit of gore in that in here that we did get for a film based off a band. Like, it was quite shocking. I figured a lot of the things that would show off, it wouldn't show, it would be more off screen or whatnot. But there's some disturbing images in here, like when Dead commits suicide in the country house. I mean, you see his brains blown out, you see him cutting his wrists and his throat and the blood coming down. The practical effects are amazing here. I think they're practical. They look real, and nothing looks cartoonish or cheap like a lot of CGI or anything. Yeah, it looks great, especially like the whole head exploding in that, and it's real shocking. Like, real disturbing imagery there. Or when Dead's on stage, cutting himself on stage, you're like, ooh, it looks nasty. It really gets under your skin. And all the other random murders that happen throughout this film and the church burnings and stuff, it's like they really don't shy away from that type of thing, which I think is exactly what they needed to tell this story. Even though, again, the story can kind of never work in a Hollywood sense, this is probably as close as we're going to get. And the narrative is a slippery slope into tragedy, which it seems to be the type of movies that I really connect with for some reason. It's really a dark drama at its core, with a bunch of horror and thriller elements all woven in. And we have to get into the great performances as well. This film, I mean, everybody does a perfect job at what they're given, especially Rory Culkin. He really elevated this entire film for me. He completely sold his role. I completely bought his character 100%. He basically starts off with the little band called Mayhem, and he ends up pretty much becoming the leader, or one of the big hot shots in the Black Circle, which is like this club for the black metal fans. But what starts out as a club, the Black Circle, quickly turns into a cult of a bunch of extremists who start burning down churches, murdering people at random, violating women and that. And they just become a real bad batch of people. But when the Black Circle starts getting exposed for these church burnings and such, and they start getting mentioned on the media, and Euronymous starts opting out of it. He doesn't want as much to do with it. He starts getting completely paranoid, thinking the feds are watching him all the time. It really just became way too much for him. Funny enough, at this point, it was almost as if he was growing out of that phase he was going through, that anarchy phase. But that anarchy was turned up to extreme in his late teen years. But at this point, he has a girlfriend. She seems to really be bringing out his lighter side in him. And yeah, that never happened in real life. He never actually had this. He had multiple girls he was seeing, but there wasn't just this one girl who started to change him and show him his lighter side. That was all in the movie. But it works for this film. It kind of changes him, and he starts to move on from his past. Eventually even cutting off his hair, which I thought was a real cool way to show that he's ready for change. He's ready to move on. Again, that did not happen in real life. He did not cut off his hair. Apparently they only cut his hair when he was in the morgue. And by the end, he was basically seen as a poser, because after everything he built, he kind of is going against it now and is turning his back on it, while still attaining most of the credit for everything that's going on while he's not the one actually doing it. And all of this eventually led to Varg going to murder Euronymous for taking all the credit for all the Black Circle activity, as well as the whole Norwegian black metal scene. Now, Varg kind of has the opposite transition as Euronymous throughout this movie. At the start, he's a more of a kind person and generous in that. And as the movie goes on, he gets pushed to his limits, and he ends up becoming the worst of them all, going out and proving that he is the most extreme, burning the most churches, and just becoming the face of black metal. But again, like I said, he gets really mad and jealous kind of over Euronymous, calling him out all the time for doing all this talk but never actually putting any of it into motion. And he was just essentially manipulated so much through the club and put down so many times by Euronymous throughout the course of the first half of this film. It led him to become more evil than all of them could have imagined, and they really created a monster. A guy who was saying that he was part Nazism, paganism, Satanism. The guy was so lost, he didn't even know what he was going for at the end. He just knew that he was becoming pure evil. And to this day, Varg has been released from prison. He has served his sentence. This was like a 95 or something like that when he did the murder on Euronymous. So he's out now, and he's living a free man. I'm pretty sure he's still doing music stuff with his band Burzum. Which is interesting enough, you know. The only other character I really want to get into is Dead. He was the vocalist of the band for a little bit, which is really cool because he brought like corpse paint to the band and to the black metal scene in general. And it wasn't like a Kiss thing. He explains it's more like to look like a dead person, because he, in his mind, he was dead. And that had a lot to do with him being super depressed and that, like, he was essentially dead inside. But the guy would like bury his clothes in the dirt and that, and dig them up before a show and wear them, so he'd feel even more like he was dirty and essentially a corpse, right? But his depression eventually got to him, and he committed suicide in the country house by shooting himself in the head after having lacerations all over his body, on his wrists, on his throat. But it wasn't quick enough, so he had to blow his brains out with the shotgun. Real messed up. It actually happened in real life, and Euronymous was the first to find him and take pictures of him, which is real crazy and creepy in real life. Very disturbing. In the movie, it's disturbing enough, but thinking about that in real life, you're like... And there's some rumors out there that Euronymous made necklaces with parts of his skull, dead skull. It's shown a bit in the movie. He was giving them to the band members. And in real life, apparently that did happen, they claim, that he gave necklaces to other bands he deemed worthy in the Norwegian black metal scene. I don't know how true that is, but that sounds real disturbing. Either way, every character in this film are interesting. All the ones that we get to spend more time on and they kind of develop. There's a few that are underdeveloped, which I'll get into in a sec. But for the most part, the ones we do get to spend time with are real interesting and unique. Now getting into the few of the negatives of this film that I have. I don't have many, but one of them being, I kind of wish this was more of a biopic on Mayhem instead of following Euronymous the entire time. It's interesting enough, but I think if we would have added a little more runtime, like another 20 minutes, we could have learned a little bit more about the bassist and the drummer, and even the new vocalist that comes in after Dead. We don't know much about those guys. They don't get much screen time, and they're kind of left on the back burner, which is unfortunate because they are a part of the band, and I would have liked to know a little more about them as well. So yeah, this movie is not perfect, but there's not a whole lot wrong with it either. I have a really good time every time I watch it, and I'm always surprised at how dark and sinister it can actually get for almost like a biopic, you know? So if I'm going to have to go ahead and rate this film, I'm going to give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. I think it's very good, and you should check it out if you're interested in this type of story, or if you're just a fan of a darker thriller. I think this one might be right up your alley, even if you're not a fan of black metal, because I'm not a fan of the genre, but this movie still kicks ass. So there you have it, guys. There's my review on Lords of Chaos. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this too, Heather. This one was for you. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.